Next up, I have this anxiety and worry individual curriculum. So if you've been in Impact for a few months, you've probably seen some of my other individual curriculums. And I hope you love how I have them set up here. I kind of have it divided. So when you download the zip file and open it up, this is what you'll see. So I'll take you through each one here. So this one's just a feelings check poster that you can use at the beginning of your sessions. I have it for different age levels. Then I have here just some general best practices for individual counseling and a checklist for session prep planning. Then I have the counselor's guide. So this one is specifically for this resource, in this case, anxiety. So I have the objectives that we want to meet, and then the compatible Ask a Student standards, mindsets, and behaviors. And then I have some supplemental videos from GoNoodle on mindfulness and deep breathing that I link to there. Now for the real juicy stuff, we have the activities, the data tools, and the journal. So let's go ahead and start with the activities. So here you'll find the actual activities you're going to be doing with students. And there are 5 activities, and then this also includes 5 journals. So for the first activity, it's talking about what's happening in their brain, and we're explaining the amygdala and the prefrontal cortex to the students. So they can, this is just like kind of a worksheet you can review with them, and they can talk about how their body feels when they're anxious and in survival mode. So I think before we really dive deep into the anxiety coping strategies, it's so important for students to understand what's happening in their brain. I love using this. And then we go on to talk about the worry brain and the thinking brain. And there's a fun little maze they can do. Next up is a coping skills choice board. So this one's fun. They can choose one coping skill from each color category, 3 total to practice. So this one's fun because it plays into their different strengths. So for example, there's 3 grounding activities, so they can choose which one they like best. Then there's 3 craft activities, so a calm down bottle, a stress ball, or a mandala. And then there are 3 like action items, such as listening to a guided meditation, practicing mindfulness, or what we call embracing the panic. So these are the corresponding pages. So let's say they pick one of these, then you'll see, like if they picked stress ball, then you'll go to the stress ball page. And here I have a tutorial on how they can make stress balls. Then we have the same thing for calm down bottle, another tutorial. The mandala, so all these are just links to watch videos. Coloring mandala, and you can listen to relaxing music while they do that one. A grounding, so this is one of the grounding activities. We tell them how to do it, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1 grounding, and that's where they're thinking about a place they love and feel safe. And then they go and do 5 things they can see there, touch there, hear there, smell there, and taste there. Now this one's better than doing a place they currently are, because the place they currently are may not feel like a safe space for them. So I like to have them imagine their safe space and then do these. Rainbow grounding is another thing they can do, just to kind of, if they're in a really heightened moment, they can stop and to calm down, look for things that are each color of the rainbow. And then similar along the lines of the rainbow grounding is the ABC grounding, where they're looking around for things that start with each letter of the alphabet. Then onto the coping skills, practicing mindfulness. So we have just like a mindfulness activity for them here about counting their breaths, along with a guided meditation and some debriefing questions. And then there's embrace the panic. So this is when they're going to observe the symptoms, name their fear, and ride the wave. So they're going to talk about an anxious experience that they recently had, or they could do it with their current one if they feel ready to process that. And they're going to talk about the fear, observe the symptoms, and ride the wave. Then for our next activity, we have a deep breathing card game. So this one's fun. It's a memory matching game. You know, I love these. And so you can see the matching symbols, but they're also doing a different breathing activity. So this one's fun. If they find the bee pair, then they do bee breaths. When they find the lion, lion breaths, and so on. So as they find the matches, when they play the memory game, then they do the corresponding breaths. For the fourth one, we have a think sheet. So this one, they can just kind of reflect on the last time they felt anxious, how they reacted, and what they would do differently now that they have these coping strategies. And finally, some discussion dice. So this time they're going to roll a die and then answer the questions based on what they roll. So one place that they could visualize to help them relax, when and where they could have designated worry time, 3 people who could help them when they're feeling anxious. Oh, sorry, one more I forgot. Social story. The social story, so you're reading this about relatable character named Tilly. And so you're going to read her story, and then you're going to make the dice game, and they're going to talk about, a time they felt like Tilly, advice they would give to her, and what she could have done differently or who she could have asked for help. So this is a cool way for them to externalize their anxiety. Okay, so after those great activities, after you do an activity each week, you can pair it with a student journal. So there's 5 journals as well, worry journal. So the first one, each of the journal pages kind of has to do with these anxiety strategies. So one is to ask the thinking brain. So they're going to write one of their worries, and then they're going to practice reframing it here. So what they're worried about, and then they're going to change it to a question. So instead of I'm going to fail this test, it would be am I going to fail this test? And then they answer with their thinking brain. Oh, well, I prepared for the test, so I'll probably do well. So then they do their own example of a worry, rephrase to a question, and then answer with the thinking brain. Their next strategy is the in 10-year strategy. So they can use the same worry each week, or they could do different worries, whatever they want. And then they're going to talk about 10 years from now. Will it matter? Will they remember it? Why or why not? Number 3, possible or probable. So again, writing a worry and then following the graphics here to see, if it's possible. If it's not even possible, they can stop there, but they follow through their mind mapping here. So is it possible? Yes. Is it probable? Yes. And then even if it's both, how likely is it that it will happen? Then you can talk from there. Then the next one is gradual exposure. So that's where they can, make a goal and then talk about ideas to make it more comfortable, break it down, and talk about how worried they are on a scale of 1 to 10 about each thing, and then visualize it. So I give an example of a sleepover here, and then they can do their own. So right here is where they would fill in their own. It's a really powerful strategy. And lastly is worry time. So this is what we talked about in the one activity. It talks about designated worry time. So it's picking a time to worry so you don't have to worry all day. So that's one thing they could do. So they're going to make a designated worry time. And then name it to tame it is try to name their worry to take away some of its power. So I meet with woo-woo for 15 minutes after school. So if they, take the attention away from it and give it a silly name, it may help it feel more manageable. Okay, guys, so that's what you're actually going to be doing with the kiddos is the activities and the journal. So the next up, you have the data collection tools. So these are for you. So you're going to give the students a self-assessment before and after the service is provided. So at the first session and at the last session. So be sure to get their name and date so you can track when they were. I've definitely made the mistake of not putting dates on self-assessments. So they're going to answer these questions, and then you'll compare and collect the data to see how they've improved after services. Then I also have a digital version of it. So if you click there, you'll get the digital version. Then we have a behavior progress monitoring form. So this one's on anxiety. Obviously, so this is for parents or teachers, not for students. So the parents or teachers are going to answer. They're going to do one before and after as well. So you send this out before services, that would be phase 1. They would circle or highlight this, and then after, phase 2. And they're going to answer based on these items. So for example, request for help appropriately or manages anxiety appropriately. Never, rarely, sometimes, often, or almost always. And then they'll do the same thing after the session so we can see since the intervention and counseling was implemented if they've improved or not. So I like to do these along with a self-assessment so you get the student perspective and the parent-teacher perspective. Hopefully it's improvement all around. And then I have a digital version for this as well. And lastly, we have a student rating scale. So this one we want the kiddos to do. So each week, so they'll put their name here, and then each week they'll write the date that they meet, and then they'll color in the number that best describes their anxiety level on a scale of 1 to 10. Just encourage them to be honest. There's no right or wrong answer. So they can kind of see their progress, maybe, and it's definitely not saying that they're supposed to get less and less anxious, but it's just an observation, merely an observation to see, sometimes they feel more anxious than other times. And, maybe you can talk about why they felt anxious. Maybe during the first session, they felt very anxious because it was the first session and they'd never been to counseling before. So they're going to do the student rating scale. And that is the final data collection tool. I absolutely adore this anxiety curriculum, and I hope your students really find it helpful.